Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with Dr. Jessie Mahoney.
And Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are physicians and leaders who are also trained in coaching, yoga, mindfulness, and integrative medicine.
We are also mothers, spouses, sisters, daughters, aunts, and friends.
In this podcast, we share candid, heart-centered, loving, science-based, thoughtful, and often fun conversations about the challenges life throws at us.
With our collective experience of over 30 years in physician and personal wellness, we reflect and offer pearls of wisdom for navigating life's challenges with more ease.
From parenting, marriages, money scarcity, cancer survivorship, uncertainty, challenges in practicing medicine, we cover it all.
We invite you to refresh your perspective and empower yourself with mindset, mindfulness, and other well-being tools that actually work. A quick reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice. Welcome to our episode on how to move forward when you are at a crossroads with Dr. Heather Fork of Doctors Crossing.
Dr. Heather Fork is a dermatologist and a coach, and she's now been a coach longer than she was a dermatologist.
So a few months ago, Jessie and I were invited to be guests on her Carpe Diem podcast, and we thought it would be really fun to have her join us here to talk about how to move forward when you're at a crossroads. And in particular, we wanted to focus on the problematic role that fear-based thinking often plays. And I also want to put a disclaimer in that if you hear like a whooshing noise, that is not an issue with your audio. It is because there are fighter jets outside of my window. And so we welcome the reality and the imperfection that is my truth. So welcome, Dr. Fork. Thank you so much again for having us on your podcast. It was really fun. And might I add that I'm really, really grateful that you also sent us the choice for a lovely book as a result of being on your podcast. That was so thoughtful. Will you please introduce yourself to our listeners and share a little bit more about the particular time point for when you actually recognized that dermatology was no longer the right career for you?
Well, you're so very welcome, and it was just lovely to have both of you on the podcast. And mindfulness is such a key topic, and it's something that's a great tool when you are at the crossroads. So I've been sharing that with my listeners and my clients, and I'm very honored to be here. Now, a little bit about that pivot point. So there were, I'd say, two major pivot points. And the first one was, it was about 4.5 years into being a dermatologist. I had a solo practice that I started out of residency. And one day I asked myself this question, Heather, are you happy? And with some trepidation. And the answer was, no, I'm really not. And so I bought this book, You Can Be Happy No Matter What. It's kind of cheesy, but it was good. And so it started me thinking about my situation. And I won't go into all the details, but it was kind of a difficult time in my life personally, and some things going on at work, nothing to do with patients. And so I stepped back, and I'd actually just purchased a building because I was going to move the practice to this location, because I had this vision that if I could be in this beautiful office space, standing around drinking cappuccino, that somehow that would make things all right. And the thing is, I don't even drink coffee. So, but somehow I thought this was going to fix the problem, similar to the way when you're married and maybe you decide a baby's going to fix the marriage, or building a house is going to fix the marriage. And then I had this sudden aha that this wasn't the answer. And I called it my realtor and I said, Heather, right. And I called up my realtor and I said, Jeff, sell the building. And he's like, are you okay, Dr. Ferg? I said, no, I'm not okay. Sell the building. So long story short, we sold the building and I stayed in a rental office for the next 4.5 years. And I did a lot of things to change things so I was happier. And there's a lot of things that I tell my clients to do or suggest that they do. And then my promise to myself was, if after you do all these things to make things better, my own internal work, external things, if you're not happy, then you can do something different. So at the 9-year mark, that was really the point when I said, I'm really, things are a lot better in different ways, but I still am always thinking about what else can I do. And so then I decided to sell the practice.
And I love the realization that I'm hearing that you can decide that something different is for you. I think so many of us go through medicine and we think that it's not okay, we failed, or you can have had 9 years of dermatology and have an entire other career, and that can be an amazing life. And I think so many of us get stuck right there in the judgment of, I did all this work to do this, and it's not okay to change.
Mhm. Right. And I think I've always been a little bit of a rebel. Like my mom says, I can't tell you anything, Heather. And it's true. Like we grew up very independent, and that had a blessing and a curse, but I was always allowed to follow things that I wanted to do. And I made dumb mistakes and I did this and that, but I always was fortunately given the agency to fix something if it wasn't working for me. And I think that helped me when I was in this practice that I had chosen to do. My parents didn't talk me into medicine. No one paid for my education in terms of medical school. And so I was like, it's not right if every day you're looking at your schedule and thinking, well, I love these patients. I love the people, but I can't wait till I'm done the day. And then how can I shorten my schedule so I'm working 4 days a week? How can I shorten it so I'm working for 3.5 or 3 days? And that's not right for patients. And then it's not right for me. And the thing I think you really notice is, are you contracting in your job and what you're doing, or your relationship, or is your energy expansive? It doesn't need to get any more complicated than that, really. And so that's when, even though I didn't know what I was going to do, I had absolutely no idea. I really almost wanted to just take a break. I sold the practice.
Yeah. And such a beautiful reminder that many people feel like they can't change their mind until they know what's next. And that keeps us stuck. And so you changed without really knowing what was next. And I've seen many, many people in the pause is where they can figure out what's next. But as you mentioned, until you do that inner work, you often don't know what's next. And many of us can't do the inner work at the same time as practicing medicine because there's just too much pull in different directions, and or we feel so out of alignment that we don't have that clarity.
Mhm.
So we thought we'd talk a little bit about that inner work. And I love this idea. You mentioned a very specific way of describing it. Much of what we do is very similar, and we use different words. And you use this word inside out, which I really liked. And how you get to change is inside out, and doing that inside work first and the inner work. And I often say you have to change your mindset first, and then you make the change. But if you make the change first, get that new building with the latte machine, or move, or buy a new house, or have it, then it doesn't get better. And I made a number of changes in roles and locations, thinking over there, I'll feel better. And yet until you do your inner work, you don't have that clarity. And so do you want to talk a little bit about your view of doing the inner work? The inside out is what leads to change.
That's so well put, Jessie. I love the question. I mean, it's a big topic, but I would say, in a nutshell, you're really reconnecting with who you really are. And that's something that we may have had a better sense of when we were younger, and we lost sight of it through the training and the narrowing of our focus, and having to quiet that voice that may be saying, I don't want to study on the weekend. I don't want to stay up all night. I really don't want to go in and see this patient, but you have to. So you get really used to quieting that voice, almost shutting it up, so you can do the work of being a physician. And there are things that are very appropriate about that. So when I work with physicians, there's this process often of reconnecting with yourself. And people will often say, well, I don't have any passions. Like, I want to be like that person who knows exactly what they want to do, and I can't figure it out. And I don't even know what I want and how I get there. So there's a sense that the heart, like when I think about it, it's almost like the heart is covered by a lot of R16 insulation. It's got this padding, and part of the work is starting to reconnect with the heart. How do we do that? We just start following our energy. Again, there's so much physics in career change. We can complicate it, but if we say, all right, what's something that gives me energy? Like, for example, when I speak with clients, they might say, well, I used to love to read, or I like to be out in nature. I used to paint, or I used to play the guitar. And so if you start reconnecting with things that connect you to your heart, connect you to your energy, what happens is the heart starts to wake up. And we may tell ourselves, well, how is this really going to bring me closer to figuring out whether I should stay or go into pharma or health insurance or, have a donut franchise? It works because you're starting to kind of get that GPS going again. You're kind of jump starting it. And so part of this is reconnecting with the GPS. And another part is just getting your battery charged again. Because so many people are so burned out, so tired, so exhausted that they can't really do some of the work we need to do to think about things. And so I say, all right, imagine you have this charger, and until you sit on the charger for a certain amount of time, you're not going to function that well. Just like I have this electric lawnmower, and if the battery runs out or it's low, you put it in there and it's going to stutter and then not be able to mow the lawn or do what you want to do. So people really need to start saying, okay, how do I need to take care of myself? How low is my battery? How can I recharge my battery? How can I start to energize myself before like making big decisions or expecting yourself to make big decisions?
I love that. I often say that we can't change on empty or below empty, which is
Mhm.
most physicians come to trying to consider career change.
Mhm.
And so I like this, their battery is literally dead. You have to call AAA. And
Right.
so
Mhm.
we were not taught about energy in medicine, and it didn't matter what energized you. And so I think for many, this feels like this. They're saying they want to change careers, and now you're talking about energy and being
Mhm.
depleted. And so it takes a moment of pause to appreciate some of these different concepts. And this idea of connecting with your heart, we were literally told not to feel in medicine. We were supposed to pretty much like all the things in our specialty equally. It wasn't really okay to not like something or not like a certain topic. And so I think for many, it's like this foreign concept. And so pausing and it taking time to sort of reconnect to that makes perfect sense. It reminds me of the pause. And so many of us are urgent. There's no pause. We're just going to jump right ahead and need to know how to change it as quickly as possible. So we want to talk about fear, which is um, doesn't sound super fun at the outset, but I think the role of fear in this transition and crossroads is really critical. Did you want to talk specifically about that?
Oh, about the fear-based thinking at the crossroads? Yes, I think that's probably one of the most important things after like focusing on yourself, because it's usually the thing that's keeping people stuck. Mhm.
How does it keep us stuck?
Well, often when I talk to a physician for the first time, they'll say, I've, been thinking about this for a number of years. It could be anywhere from a couple months to ever since they started on this path. It could be 20 years ago. And maybe they've been doing some research, they've been listening to podcasts or looking in Facebook groups, and they'll say, well, I really just, I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do. And I'll say, well, what do you think's keeping you from figuring this out? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, I think I'm afraid. And it's a nice, honest admission, because you can't fix the problem unless you identify where the problem is. This is the fundamental challenge here, because you can give somebody a ton of resources. You can show them a path. You can show them people who've walked this path. But if they still have these fears, their ego-based, fear-based mind is going to find reasons why they're going to be the one person who can't do this. So I've seen this time and time again. And so the next thing I'll ask them is, well, what are you afraid can happen if you start to make changes? And the list is pretty reproducible. Okay. Things I'm sure you've heard before, which is one. What if I try something different and I fail? Like I'm not good at it. What if I try something different and I'm not happy? But some people hear that something. I think no matter what you do, you're not going to be happy. And start to believe that. Another common fear is, what if I leave and can't go back? And I want to go back. What are other people going to think? I'm going to disappoint my mentors, my spouse, my parents, my patients, and then the guilt feelings come in, or the feelings of shame, or they worry like, well, what's wrong with me that I can't hack this? My colleagues seem to be handling it okay. Why can't I do this? And then they also, another really common one is the money. They pretty much most people who aren't real familiar with other salaries assume their income's going to go down, and they say, well, I can't afford to take a hit on my income. And then of course there's even more, such as, I don't have any transferable skills. You're in the emergency department, you can't match those skills. They're amazing skills. So the list is long, but one thing I have them do right away, which is to reframe them. So how would you do a 180 and reframe them? And they always can reframe them. So it's really, do we want to be, I call it south of the equator in like negative fear-based thinking, or do we want to be above the equator in possibility-based thinking?
So in addition to that 180 exercise that you help your clients do, is there anything else that helps them to get out of that very natural negative attention bias-based fear-based thinking process?
Yeah, that's a great question, Yi Chang. And there's a number of different things. A part of it is looking at your own history and acknowledging what you've already done. Because every physician has done many hard things. And so when we start to be objective about the things that we had to learn, like you think about when we went into med school and we wore that short coat and we didn't even know how to like figure out if the liver was enlarged or not, or if someone was anemic, all the things that you had to learn to be able to do what we do, which is, brain surgery, replace knees and lungs, and help people who are in a psychotic crisis and who are in diabetic ketoacidosis. Like, just when they start to realize, okay, I have done hard things, and what you're going to do next will never be that hard. And then I ask them, who are you? Who is this person that's you that's done these things? What do you want to acknowledge about yourself beyond the knowledge that you have? Because you look at what we had to do to accomplish these things, the number of years of training, the sacrifice, the making hard decisions, the collaborating with other people, the facing conflict. I mean, having life-ending conversations. Like, this is not a robot. This is not a robot. We're talking about a human being who has amazing skills that they can use in many different areas. So it's really like taking accounting of the reality of who you are.
Thanks for sharing that, because oftentimes we don't give ourselves the time or space, and there's not really a forum or any sort of like invitation really to do like a honest retrospective of everything that we've already accomplished. And so we were talking about the negative attention bias automaticity. This is one way for being very intentional about practicing positive attention bias that is fact-based.
Right. And the thing of it is that fear-based thinking, it's, as you talked about on the mindfulness podcast, it is it's reflexive often. And it's almost like out of our control till we have that awareness of what's happening. Because when you speak with someone, like often when I speak with a client for the first time, a physician for the first time, you can start to hear how everything you say, they have a negative take on it, or why that's not going to work, or why they can't do that, or why not them. And it's really just the ego has co-opted them. And when I say ego, I don't mean self-esteem, confidence. I mean the ego-based part of us that's fear-based, that we will never satisfy with whatever it thinks we need to do or be. And so part of this is building this awareness is of, how am I talking to myself? Is this me, or is this really just fear talking? And so it's a practice, like anything, like your mindfulness practice is. I will mention to them, like, so when a thought comes up, is this a south of the equator thought? Is it taking you down into negativity, or above the equator, again, where we go to possibility-based thinking? Because you can't really change your reality unless you change how you're seeing your reality. And then when they start to see possibilities and reframing the thoughts about themselves, like, I can't do this, I'm not going to make enough money, I don't have transferable skills to. Well, I've done a lot. I can do hard things. I have a lot of things I can do. There's no ceiling on what I can make. I have a lot to offer. Then you get into possibility-based thinking, and it opens up creativity. It opens up spontaneous things happening, synchronicity. And so you're in a completely different landscape. When you're in that landscape, everything starts to look differently. And I love this quote by Joe Dispenza. I love this quote by Wayne Dyer, and he says, change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So the landscape starts to change. Instead of being in the dark, they're in the light, and things start to happen differently.
And I think one of the things that I find people find tricky is when you're at that crossroads and you feel stuck, you don't even appreciate that you're asking bad questions, and you don't appreciate that you're not seeing things from both sides. One of the things that I find is it's almost like a feeling. It's like a lump in the throat or a pit in the stomach. There's a physiologic component that maybe they can feel that, but they can't actually have clarity about the thinking. And from my perspective, that's really what coaching actually helps you do, is to draw that out of people, because the physiologic stuckness keeps them from having that clarity of being able to see it. Do you have thoughts on that?
I think that's very accurate, because when we're in it, it just feels like who we are. It feels like our personality. And your personality becomes your personal reality. So you sort of have to change how you're seeing yourself and have that awareness. And the thing about pain, okay, so here's the thing. Pain and suffering wake us up. I mean, they certainly woke me up, and I needed a lot of pain to wake me up. I call it the universe's cattle prod. And that's often what starts people stepping back to look at things differently, because they're like, ooh, I just got let go, or ooh, my partner just said they want a divorce, or they're having an affair, or ooh, my kid is in trouble. Like, these things that are painful make us say, whatever I'm doing isn't working. Let me step back a little bit. And that's when people start having a meditation practice. They start reading books about mindset, and they start trying to understand how to do things differently. So sometimes we stay asleep for a long time before we get that, like, big volt jolt, sorry, I'm sorry about all this, the big volt that jolts us to be awake. So it's a gift. It never feels like a gift. It feels horrible and insulting, and feels like we're becoming a victim, but it's actually a gift.
And I think people in medicine require a lot of pain before they're aware of it. We were trained to struggle through a lot of pain, and sometimes it takes something as loud as a cancer diagnosis, or a death in the family, or like it can take a divorce, as you mentioned, like huge, very painful things. Little pain doesn't get our attention. And I think to recognize that about ourselves. So if you happen to have what I called in my own self was just like this sort of twangy discomfort, I think other people with lower pain tolerances might have called that pain, but for me, it was just a little twangy discomfort. And so recognizing, number one, not to judge yourself if it takes a lot of pain. And number two, that your twangy discomfort might be categorized as something really significant by someone else. So if we're stepping out of fear, I'm curious what, and this question makes me so happy, what energy helps people change? And most people listening know that I like to use the energy of love as to make change because it's sort of an activated, positive energy, and nobody can really argue with that. But I think sometimes when we're in a sticky spot, that's hard to connect with at the outset. So, what energy do you like to offer to your clients or encourage them to dig into?
That's such a great question. I love that. And it's interesting because lately I've been having my clients, when they're feeling kind of stuck, I can feel that energy is a bit trapped, to get up and we swagger. I say, give me your best, like John Wayne swagger. And I want you to start telling me all the things about yourself that are great. And I love it. I wish I had these on video because they're amazing. They just start swaggering and getting in the groove and saying these things, and the energy completely shifts. And then they tell me, oh, yeah, like I have this costume that I wear, like my Wonder Woman costume, where they've impersonated some like famous movie star or somebody that is their alter ego. And it doesn't even have to be that. It's just their own identity that really helps them feel into this way of being that is almost like having a volcano underneath you, like the energy almost can't be contained. It's that expansive. But just a simple act of getting up and try it yourself. Like, you can't feel bad when you're swaggering. You can't be depressed. You can't lack confidence. And we all have that swagger in us. So I think that's a great place to start. But I love that you said, like, sometimes we can't feel love, like that just feels too hard and we feel numb even in the heart. So I think it's just, what do you want to move towards? And and because we move away from things, I think, that are painful to us, but we move towards what calls to us, like the game warmer, colder, warmer, colder. Move towards something that is the warmer direction for you. And that energy is your spirit talking to you. So that's going to look different for different people, but it's just the sense of, how do you start to see, when you listen to yourself, where and how your body wants to move and what it's telling you? And as you listen to that, it could be a quiet energy. It could be, I just need to sit outside in the sun right now and not think or do anything. Or it might be, I need to go run and train for a marathon. So I think that's a fabulous question. And I think the answer is within.
I love the warmer, colder analogy, because what I notice in physicians in particular is we're all or none. It's like, I love that or I don't. And it's this sort of subtle is significant to something I talk about often, or little baby steps, or in Martha Beck's work, it's turtle steps. And so it doesn't have to be, it's like, is it warmer? Is it colder? Just a little shift here. And then you may have more information. And your swagger, I relate that to yoga because I'm a yoga teacher, and I'm like, it's like a yoga posture. And we do warrior poses, for example, to engender certain feelings. And so maybe even noticing, if you happen to have a yoga practice, which poses resonate with you, which poses make you feel powerful, because they're very different. Some people like to stand on their head and they feel powerful, and I do not, right? So, but everyone has sort of a different one that's like their favorite. And so that can give you information. You also looped back to something you said at the beginning, and I feel it's really important to highlight again, is that it's the energy of alignment and figuring out who you are and your inner passion. And so whatever it helps you get back to that, if it's being in your body that helps you get back to, or making lists of what you love to do, or doing things you love so that you're out of your head and in your body. I often get my most clarity when I'm walking, or when I'm on a yoga mat, or when I'm under a tree, definitely outside. And so I think beginning to connect with where do you get in the shower, where do you get your best epiphanies, and spend more time there and let that potentially be your new workshop.
Mhm, mhm. Right, right. And I love all those suggestions. And, like we know, like each person's different. They're coming from different places. Some people may be coming from very traumatic experiences, and there's things that they need to process in different ways. And sometimes, like, meditation is not good for that person because it's too connecting. And that's the thing. If you trust your own intuition, can start hearing that voice again, whether that's through journaling, through yoga practice, through meditation, or through even just having a conversation with someone who knows you well, who can listen to you and reflect back and say, when you say this, I see your energy perk up, your eyes light up. And that's a huge way to get reflection. So if you have a trusted friend, partner, spouse, um, being able to just speak honestly about what you're feeling and ask for them, can you give me some reflection on what you're hearing? That can be like a great mirror to yourself if you can't quite see in that mirror yet.
Everything that both of you just said, I'm going to add that when you add mindfulness to all of it, it helps with the clarity. It helps with when the alignment starts to go askew. It helps to bring us back into alignment. And then that warm, cold analogy that you used, Heather, I think mindfulness helps us to realize what is truly warmer for us versus colder for us, rather than pretending that something is warmer for us, which could have in the past been more of like a should, or someone thinks that this should be warm for you when it's actually quite cold for you. So I think mindfulness helps with all of that.
And that's such a key point, Ni Chang, and it's giving yourself a permission slip, because you're so right. Like, we might get the information, we might hear this inner voice that says, you always wanted to have a coffee shop, or you really want to help out moms right after they've had a baby, but not be the doctor. Or it might say, well, you want to be a travel blogger. And so we can get that information, but it's not unlikely, especially if it's a bit out of the box, for us to shut that down because it doesn't seem acceptable, like you were saying. So that mindfulness practice of, ooh, what am I doing? Like, how am I responding to this information is so helpful, because we are very programmed to do what's expected of us. It's kind of been ingrained, and a lot of physicians have that personality type that is part of their marching order. And we're so good at it that it can take some deprogramming, so to speak, to say, can I give myself a permission slip that no one else has to sign?
And bringing non-judgment, which is one of the tenets of mindfulness. I think we are judgy people in medicine. We're trained to judge. There are better and worse. And so we immediately judge ourselves and just shut down the conversation and stay stuck in those crossroads. We don't know which way to go. And so recognizing how much judgment you might bring to what you think you want to do.
Oh,
I
yeah.
often will say, if no one would judge you and you wouldn't judge yourself and it would all work out fine, what would you do? And then it comes the coffee shop or the, whatever it might be. And so I think it's fun to just remind people, like, our natural tendency is to judge. By the way, the world does judge, but you can also just acknowledge that that's what you're responding to, and you can still have this desire. You can decide what to do about it later.
Exactly. It reminds me, Mel Robbins just came out with a book, and it's called Let Them. And I think that's a great response to, like, if people want to judge, let them. You do you, they do them, and let them, and that's okay.
I love that.
That's funny that you just brought that up, because we literally had just recorded an episode and I brought up Mel Robbins and the let them theory as well. So
wow.
our addition is let them, and I can choose my response.
That's so great. And I mean, it is so powerful. It's so freeing. And like, we can't control anybody's thoughts anyway. And like, typically they're bored with us pretty soon if they are judging us.
Thank you so much, Heather, for joining us and sharing your wisdom. As we close, is there anything else that you'd want to share with our listeners who might be going through something similar that you have gone through, or what many of your clients are going through in the midst of a potential pivot in their careers, leaving clinical medicine altogether?
Great. And thank you so much. It's a lovely honor to be here. I would say, because I always try to make things as simple as possible, because we tend to overthink things, is ask yourself this question. In my situation, what is my career satisfaction 0 to 10? 10, I'm really happy. I love it. 0, Calgon, take me down the river away. And we're looking for at least a 7 out of 10 or higher. And I hear a lot of 1s and 2s, and that's hemorrhaging happiness. Like, that's bad. We wouldn't leave a patient like hemorrhaging happiness. We would not leave a patient hemorrhaging. So I don't want you to stay like below a 7 out of 10 for very long. So just say, okay, if I'm below a 7 out of a 10, I'm going to make a commitment to start looking at things and changing things till I am at least there. And then that's your commitment, and that's how you get out of the garage and down the road.
Thank you for that kind of litmus test, that Likert scale for our listeners. And so as we close, you segued it perfectly for us. We like to end with some reflection questions. So that's a great one to start off with. Another one is the one that you started off this podcast with, which was, are you happy?
Is fear-based thinking keeping you stuck?
What's your personal retrospective? What have you already gone through and accomplished that has brought you here to this very moment? And as you notice, these questions are all inspired by what you just said. So they are hot off the press from our inspiration, which is you, Heather. Can you actually act out, maybe privately, like in the privacy of your own home, or maybe not, like maybe you want to share this acting out with your partner or another loved one, acting out your actual swagger, like walking really confidently, doing some power poses, Superwoman or Superman power poses. Can you act it out? So thank you so much, Heather, for joining us and your wisdom. So besides listening to your podcast, Carpe Diem, and to our episode, how else can our listeners learn more about you and to connect with you?
Absolutely. And thanks again. It's been lovely to be here. And an easy way to reach us is to email us at team@doctorscrossing.com. That's TEAM@doctorscrossing.com if you want to find out about scheduling a consult or the coaching program or anything. And we also have a freebie tab at the doctorscrossing.com website, and there are a bunch of free resources, including a starter kit for moving forward from the Crossroads that you can download. So, if you have nothing better to do, want to download some freebies, you can find them there.
Thanks so much for joining us. And for anyone who feels the need for a mindful moment, please stay on after the singing bowl for a few moments of reflection.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We encourage you to dive into the show notes for each episode for more learnings and resources.
We also invite you to take a listen to the many other Mindful Healers podcast episodes. And please share the podcast far and wide with colleagues, friends, and family.
If our message and approach resonate with you, we would love to work with you.
When you listen to a podcast, you consume information, but when you work with us, you can actually practice and change.
We offer coaching and mindfulness experiences, talks, workshops, retreats, and more. Connect with us at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
The content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. We invite you to participate in the mindful moments we offer at the end of most of our podcasts, but please only do so safely. Welcome to this mindful moment offering. If it's safe for you to do so, inviting you to close your eyes or lower your gaze a few inches in front of you, noticing the support of the ground beneath your feet, the support of the chair, or whatever it is that you might be standing or sitting upon. This practice is to use when you are at a crossroads, when you intrinsically, intuitively know that the current state of things, perhaps with your career or family life, is just not in alignment. Something feels off. Acknowledging that, noticing the discomfort, seeing if you can describe what living misaligned is like for you. Could there be less joy, less energy, feeling less yourself? What is your truth with regards to the possibility of living in misalignment? So, after acknowledging that truth, delving in a layer deeper, asking your heart, what do I want? What do I really want? And it could be as simple as to be able to feel more joy, to be able to feel more in alignment, leaning into our intuition, our inner knowing, our own wisdom, acknowledging everything that you've already experienced to be here at this moment in time. Trusting yourself that you know what you want, and perhaps knowing what next step you need to take towards realignment, towards whatever it is that you want in your life. And it's okay if you don't know. Getting help helps. So, giving yourself permission to ask for help and to keep asking questions. Of yourself and of others, such that you can live in alignment and live as the best version of yourself. And as you're ready, blinking open eyes, letting the light back in. Thanks so much for doing that contemplation with me.